What's going on? You're in the Beat Sessions. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's talk about some Swedish death metal. In Flames is back with a new record. It's entitled Foregone, and they released that on February 10th. This is the 14th studio album for the band, and their follow-up to 2019's Eye the Mask. Lots to talk about with this outfit. I'll get this out of the way early, too. I discovered this band in 2002. The first song I ever heard was Cloud Connected. So you true hardcore In Flames fans, you're probably going to call me out for not being a real fan, and that's fine. This is a band that I've listened to with curiosity on and off throughout the last few decades since discovering them. Actually, I remember downloading that song in college. I went to U of A. My freshman year was 2002. I still have my acceptance letter. You need to have a laptop with 20 gigabytes of memory. It's hilarious to even read that letter now, but that was the minimum requirement for your computer. And I remember downloading all these different tracks, and you'd get like failed files, corrupted files, things that mess up your computer. If you're old enough to remember that time frame, you know, music used to be a pain in the ass to download. It really used to be kind of obnoxious to dig around and to try to get some stuff. And so my knowledge of this band stemming from that, it just kind of made me nostalgic, made me laugh. And this is an interesting band that's gone through a big transition, more early on in their career now. In hindsight, looking back now at the last 30 plus years, about 32 years now. But this band took more of a melodic turn with the release of Root to Remain back in 2002, I believe that's when that came out. And so, the interesting thing about this band, as far as where they've come now with this 14th record, I still feel like I listen to their early stuff, and the only thing I think that's different is the vocal element and how consistently heavy that was. But I listen to this band now, and especially, the opening track, The Beginning of All Things. It's a really cool song. This band, I feel like a lot of bands from the European continent drawing on traditional influences. And so to hear that incorporated throughout their music, even from like very early on, to get more of that melodic element when it came to the vocals, I feel like was a natural progression for this band, and it seemed to make sense. And if you're not thrilled about it, if you haven't listened to the band for a number of decades now because of that, I get it. If that screaming vocal element is your thing and that's what you want, these guys used to be really good at it, and I think to a certain degree, they still are. There's still a ton of that in their music, especially on this new record, Foregone. I love the balance of that old school element with more melodic vocal elements as well. And I talk about the other musical elements that they're incorporating that they give the music more of that quality. So I like the balance with the vocal as well. I dig this record too, more of an observation on what's going on around us versus a lot of their stuff has been pretty personal, from a lyrical standpoint, more about the inner turmoil. So I dig the kind of the change of perspective that the band is working with on this record. And really just, I think what I dig about Swedish death metal in general, I just laugh that death metal in Sweden in particular is just such a big thing that it gets its own classification, but more influenced by punk. I feel like there's more pace. There's a little bit more of that like speed metal aspect of it, so to speak. There's obviously so much more to the dynamics of this, but I dig that slight difference there. And most of the Swedish metal bands that I've had a chance to listen to, I really dig for that reason. And so this new record, I think that fans of the band for decades now, you're going to love what's going on in this. You're going to hear new stuff, old stuff. This is drawn on all the things that they've done throughout the entirety of their career. Some of you old fans, like, I don't know how many of you, have gone back to this band. I don't know how many of you have just completely, rode them off and have just ignored them for 2 decades. But I think that there might be enough here that you get back into this band. It still surprises me to this day that people were as salty as they were, maybe still are. I feel like it's been kind of a long time, so nothing to be salty about still. But I listened to this band, and like obviously the vocal element, like I said, much heavier early on in their career, but it's musically there still feels. It still feels like the same band. And I think it's interesting too, considering that this is an outfit that no longer has a founding member in it. It's more of an entity. And I think that's cool. I think that, when a band takes on that spirit, it becomes bigger than the people in it. I think that's a really cool space for a band to evolve into. And you see it with a band like Leonard Skinner. And some of you might laugh when I drop that comment, but you think about those guys that are still playing that music, and it's about the music. Ronnie by name, and you might not know a single person that's playing that music in that outfit now, but I think that's kind of the point, is that those guys aren't there for themselves. They're there to carry on that tradition. And I feel like In Flames being in a cornerstone of the Swedish metal scene, and being such a big part of metal as it's grown in the last 3 decades. This just feels like a good place for them, and I really enjoyed this record. It kicks a lot of ass at 12 songs, 47 minutes. The beginning of all things, I like the way this thing kicks off. Band talks about how this really wasn't where they were going with this song, but it's got this pretty acoustic arrangement with some traditional strings, and it's just such a dope way to open this record. I really like the way that it sets the tone. And then right into State of Slow Decay, and just super heavy riffage, just big chugging riffs, like the mid-tempo feel, the drums, and then the pace hits harder. It's just good guitars all over the place, hard vocal element. This is definitely a track that reminded me more of that earlier work of theirs. Right into Meet Your Maker, your third track, and good balance here. Hard on the double bass to open up this thing, and more of that chugging riffage, but you get the vocal element on this performance is much more melodic, and kind of more of that newer feel that the band has taken on. Great solo element in this track, but I like that right out of the gate we're getting some old, some new. These guys are very aware, I feel like, of what they're doing and how they're putting together their records. And this is a smart record, in my opinion. Bleeding Out, your fourth track, bit of a electronic mix with those big guitars, and I like that. Talk about the song Cloud Connected. First getting into this band, I wasn't sure how much of that electronic element would be there, so I always kind of laughed that was the first track that I was exposed to. But it made me think of that song, Bleeding Out, and I definitely the timing signature on this thing is pretty cool. Light mid-tempo feel, but I like the heavy vocal element on this particular track. It keeps balance, really cool dynamic, and I dig the breakdown into the solo on this track. Another nice component there of the track. Foregone Part 1 is your fifth track, and it goes to work immediately. I really like the double bass and the intense vocal, really good melodic riffage working here. So I like that when you're getting that melodic component with the heavy vocal. This thing has got this like cool little acoustic bridge, and then the breakdown into the solo. At this point, it feels a little predictable from a songwriting standpoint as far as the structure, but I still enjoy the progression of it. I still think it moves nicely, even though you pretty much know exactly what's going to go down with the track. Foregone Part 2 is just a cool, it feels like a trad style metal riff, Swedish traditional music, and a cool build-in. It gets real heavy and then backs off, slowly builds with that back and forth. I really dig the dynamic of that track. And, the guys, they were talking about the beginning of all things, that opener being the third part of this, Foregone track run here. But I really like these two elements. I think Part 2 really has more character and is a much cooler song, in my opinion. Pure Light of Mine, your seventh track. Mid-tempo, you get a more of an alternative rock feel in this song, and I like that balance of metal with that alt rock feel. It's mellow. It's a bit minimal as well. The verses are anyway. Chorus is going to fill out melodically. Kind of has that 80s metal sort of feel as far as the technical guitar riffage and those tones as well. But I like that track. The Great Deceiver, your eighth track. This is my favorite. It comes in with that speed metal, and I really like the way that everything drops out in the music, except this like just lo-fi riff, just big chugging riff, and then it all hits, and that contrast is cool. Great technical work in the bridge on this song, and then the chorus hits at this just like speed metal pace. So I really like the verse, bridge, chorus, all that's going on. Really just a fun run of influences driving this track, and certainly my favorite for a lot of good reasons there. In the Dark, your ninth song. I love the rhythm in the riff on this particular track. It's just got a good groove that it settles into. It floats along, kind of like a metal anchor is the analogy I used, if you can imagine that. But just like I like when a metal band just settles into the and you can I mean, it's almost like you could bring in someone to rhyme over that. It's got this groove, it's got this vibe and this feel, and it's a really cool track for this reason. The solo is pretty sweet on that track as well. Leads into your 10th track, a dialogue in B flat minor, sharp vocal, and a really hot riff to open up this thing. It's it hits, and then you just get more of that big like signature chugging riffage. I love that about these guys. I just love how big. I feel like those are kind of two big metal things. You get either like the big riffage or the real like technical aspect, and I don't know. There's something about the chugging component, the big riff factor that I love in metal and that I love about these guys. But the lots of different influences driving on this song. Chorus a little more melodic. Like the way that it leads into your penultimate track, Sinister. Solid feel with that. I love the way that the bass ushers in the verse on this thing. A really cool element on this track. It remains mellow, pretty minimal bass. Is really just, I'm loving it on this track. I like that it's a driving element. And end the transmission, your final song, nice heavy number. Love the big chugging riffage here. We are but empty vessels with no ambition. It's one of the lines in this song. It's kind of a tough truth to wrap your head around, the way this thing ends. But like I said before, from a lyrical standpoint, focusing more on outside observations of the world. And frankly, I can't agree with that line more. And not that not that I'm trying to be negative about it. I just feel like there's so much that's been put into our lives, put into place. These freaking things, for example. And as far as just being dialed into that, to where you go back just 3-4 generations, what life was like for most people. The average lifestyle consisted of family waking up and working and surviving, whether you were in a city, going to factories, or whether you were out in the country tilling land, whatever it might be. Like, your purpose was to wake up and survive literally every single day, unless you had the luxury of being part of the aristocracy. And most of us did not come from the aristocracy. Most of us come from poor people, and that's how we end up, lower class, lower middle class, wherever you're at in the spectrum. And so I look at that line, and I think it's meant not to be negative, but I think it's meant to give pause, and for us to think about, as far as our daily lives. What are we doing to help bring about something constructive? And that's how I'm viewing that. That's how I'm liking that line. And I think it's I think it's a call to action. And I dig it. I dig this record. We're going to vinyl please it for that reason. And I hope you enjoy this experience as well. I'm enjoying all the metal this week. It's been a lot of fun the last 10 days or so with these couple of records. So I hope you enjoyed this record. I hope you find this review helpful. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel, do all the things to help Keith and the MB and I blow this project up in 2023. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews, and tune into the live show on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we will see you next time on the Beat Sessions.